There are nearly 200 ABA-approved law schools in the United States, but most of them do not offer meaningful online or hybrid JD programs. In fact, it's only somewhere around 20 to 30 law schools out of approximately 200. And this is in a world where remote work is normal, MBAs are hybrid, nursing is hybrid, engineering is hybrid, students are taking on $150,000 in debt, and the number of traditional college age students is projected to shrink due to the coming demographic cliff. And so you can debate the exact number of law schools with these programs, but the overall question is, why are there so few online JD programs right now? And what happens if this doesn't change? It seems that legal education is not prepared for what's coming. Even if we define the programs generously as being roughly 31 out of the 200 ABA approved law schools, that's only about 15% of the market. That means 85% of ABA law schools are still operating primarily in traditional in person models. And that's in an industry facing demographic contraction. Now, there are five real structural reasons why there are so few online JD programs right now. The first is due to prestige. Law is prestige driven. It's about rankings in the US News World Report, the clerkships, big law pipelines, judicial networks. These elite institutions don't feel immediate pressure to change. And when demand exceeds supply, tradition can feel safe for law schools, but prestige only works in a market that is stable. When the market is tightening, as it is due to the coming demographic cliff, fewer law school applicants, fewer law school grads, prestige alone isn't going to fill seats, especially outside the top tier. Now, the US News rankings reward LSAT medians, GPA medians, bar passage rates, and employment outcomes. There is no ranking category for delivery flexibility, and law schools that experiment can introduce volatility, which introduces risk, which can hurt their rankings and affect their applications, affect their donations. And so the schools, by nature, are conservative and default due to stability, ultimately. Now, the ABA is a licensing institution, and law is a licensed profession. And the ABA historically limited distance education credits. Schools need variances and approvals to allow for online education. And those rules have loosened a bit over time, but the regulatory environment moves fairly slowly by design. The fourth big factor is the faculty. Law schools are governed by faculty, tenured professors, vote on the curriculum, and online teaching changes how teaching is conducted. These institutions are built around the old school Socratic classroom model, and so they've got to make a cultural shift, a shift in their structure. The fifth big factor is the financial architecture. Law schools have fixed cost structures built around their physical institutions, their buildings, their libraries, the administrative overhead. And a hybrid education model can expand geographic reach, but would require operational redesign. And that would, of course, raise the question, why are they spending all this money on buildings and in-person support when that is not where their students are located? So it's going to create a lot of internal friction and require them to rethink the entire operation of their model. Now, I alluded to the demographic cliff. For those who aren't aware, between 2026 and 2032, the US is projected to see a significant decline in the number of traditional college-age students. Ever since the 2008 financial crisis, there has been a lowering or decline in the birth rate, and that has never recovered. And so that means that there's going to be fewer people going to college, fewer people applying to law school, which means fewer law school applicants. Now, there was a temporary spike in applications due to the pandemic, but that was only temporary. We're going to see the reduction in applicant volume in the next couple of years, and it's going to hit from the bottom up. The top 14 law schools will probably be stable. The top 50 will be mostly stable, but below that, the law schools are going to be much more exposed. And when enrollment tightens, law schools are needing to become a lot more flexible. Now, there's a second big risk aside from the demographic cliff, which is the coming federal loan exposure. Most law schools rely heavily on the federal Grad Plus loans. Those are ending this year. There's going to be a cap on how much law students can borrow, in fact, and how many grad students can borrow, of only $50,000 per year. And that's going to cause these tuition-dependent institutions to become a lot more vulnerable. Schools with lower overhead, more flexible delivery, and broader demographic reach are going to have more room to adapt. But schools that are dependent on physical seat filling have less room to adapt. They're going to have a lot more risk management to deal with. Now, we raised the question here, should there be more online or hybrid JD programs? I would argue yes, but only if the outcomes hold. Online legal education does not eliminate legal reasoning, doesn't eliminate bar exams. The question is not online versus in person. The question is, can law schools expand access without sacrificing bar passage rates and employment outcomes? Right now, hybrid programs disproportionately attract working professionals, military service members, parents, rural students, and career changers. Many of these people would not have attended law school otherwise, so this is expanding the applicant pool. But if this leads to a resulting drop in outcomes, in employment outcomes or bar passage rates, employers are going to become a bit more skeptical. Now, to bring this back to you, I want to leave you with 3 strategic takeaways from the rise of online JDs. First, remember that outcomes matter more than the teaching modality. Regardless of in-person versus online, we want to look at bar passage rates, employment outcomes, scholarship leverage, and debt-to-income ratio. That determines your return on investment, not whether you had 80% of your classes online or all of them online. The second big factor is that LSAT leverage becomes even more important. If demographic contraction, if a decline in applicants increases competition in the top score bands, especially 170 plus, scholarships are going to get tighter at the margins. Just a couple more points on the LSAT could lead to tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship money. And as schools experiment with delivery models, they will still compete fiercely on the medians. Your LSAT score remains your leverage now more than ever. Third big takeaway, different markets mean different trade-offs. If you want to go into big law or federal clerkships or enter elite pipelines, the prestige of where you went to law school still matters a great deal. In contrast, if you want to practice regionally, if you want to work for the government, if you're only looking for JD advantage roles, not JD required, then flexibility might matter more. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here. Your situation will determine what you should do. Now, if applications stay stable, inertia wins, law schools can stick with the status quo. However, in contrast, if applications decline significantly and they stay down, law schools will have to innovate because pressure forces adaptation. Industries change through constraint. Now, the schools experimenting now with online education are building optionality. They are going to be well situated for the demographic cliff and the elimination of the Grad Plus loans. The schools that are waiting and are resistant to change are betting that things stay stable. Now, the next decade will reveal which bet was smarter. Now, if you're applying during this transition, you want to ask the better questions for your situation. Where are outcomes strongest? Where is my debt going to be lowest? Where is my leverage highest? And what kind of career am I targeting? Because this transition is happening whether schools move fast or not, and your job is to position yourself intelligently inside it. That is the real strategy. Now, if you'd like my help getting the best LSAT score possible for the best law school outcomes possible, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. That is an open offer for everyone out there watching this now or later. And if you find these lives helpful, I do them every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them. So I do appreciate your support, spreading the word, sharing this to your socials, sharing this in your Facebook groups, LinkedIn, Slack, Discord, Reddit, wherever you're with others studying for the LSAT. I do appreciate your spreading the word. The more this grows, the more I will expand it over time. Now we're on day 2 of our 5-day free LSAT course. The goal being to raise your LSAT score by 5 points in 5 days. Day 2 is all about how to guarantee you never make the same mistake twice. So you want to stop redoing what didn't work and learn to review like a top scorer. Now, let's talk about the most infuriating loop in LSAT prep. You do a full section, you miss a few, you check the answers, and you feel that little hit of relief. Okay, that makes sense. And then 3 days later, same question type, same trap, same mistake. If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't have an understanding problem, you have a repeatability problem. Because understanding something after the fact is easy. The question is, can you make the right call under time pressure with imperfect focus, while the wrong answer is designed to feel right? That's what separates a good study session from actual score growth. And so today is about building a system where mistakes turn into permanent upgrades, not temporary insights. Now, here's what most students do when they review wrong answers. They look at the right answer, they read an explanation, they nod, and they move on. That is passive review. And it's a trap because it trains the wrong skill. Passive review trains, I can recognize the right answer once someone tells me. But the LSAT tests, can you reject the tempting wrong answer before you know you're wrong? So we're going to change the target. Your goal in review is not to understand the right answer. Your goal is to diagnose the thinking error that produced your choice and then build a counter move you can actually use next time. That's how you stop repeating mistakes. Now, the method I teach is the Socratic review method. You want to use it anytime you got a question wrong, or got it right but feel like you guessed, or you were stuck between two answers. Because right but shaky is usually a future wrong answer. Now, here are the 5 questions, but I'm going to tighten them into a process you can run every single time. Step 1, what story did I tell myself? In other words, why did I choose my answer? What made it feel right in the moment? Not because it was wrong, but what was the selling point? For example, it matched a keyword from the stimulus, or it sounded strong and confident, or it felt like the conclusion. Then step 2, what did I miss that was sitting in plain sight? Why didn't I choose the right answer? What specifically made me hesitate or ignore it? For example, I didn't connect it to the question stem, or I dismissed it because it felt too mild, or I didn't notice one word that changed everything. Then step 3, name the exact error type. And this is the most important part. What was the real failure mode? Not I didn't understand, because that's useless. You want to pick something concrete, like I misread the question stem, or I overassumed what the argument was claiming, or I fell for a trap answer that was true but irrelevant, or I ignored a quantifier shift like some versus most versus all, or I mixed up sufficient versus necessary, or I let one phrase scramble my logic, or I eliminated the right answer for a bad reason, or I got emotionally attached to an answer and stopped checking. Then step 4, you want to build a catchphrase you can hear under pressure. In other words, you ask yourself, how can I rephrase the question or give myself a quick checkpoint that would catch me next time? Think this is a one-line rule you can actually use mid-section. For example, if the answer is extreme, I've got to prove it earns that extremity, or true isn't enough. Does it answer this question? Or slow down on the word unless. Translate before you evaluate, or stop and pause and ask yourself, what exactly is the conclusion? Then step 5, lock in the counter move. If I see this again, what will I do differently specifically? Not just telling yourself to be more careful, but a specific action. For example, before I look at answers, I'll restate the conclusion in 7 words, or I'll prephrase what a correct answer must accomplish. Or I'll force myself to eliminate 3 answers with written reasons. Or if I'm torn between 2, I will ID what each answer is doing. That is the system. And if you do it correctly, something's going to start happening. You'll stop thinking, I missed this question, and instead you'll start thinking, I've got a pattern, and patterns are fixable. Now, here is the big separator between plateauing in the 150s and growing into the 170 plus range. At higher score levels, improvement is not mainly about learning new concepts. It's about the quality of your decisions. 170 plus scores do not have magic brains. They have fewer repeated mistakes. They don't just review, they convert errors or mistakes into rules. And that's what we're doing today. So your assignment for today is to do only 5 LSAT questions, because the goal is not volume, the goal is leverage. I want you to pick 5 questions where you would have gotten them wrong, or you got them right, but you felt unsure about them. Not 5 random questions, 5 with similar mistakes, like you rushed, you were stuck between 2, you felt tricked, or you kept changing your mind. You want to run the Socratic review method on every single one. And you don't skip steps. You go through all 5 steps of the Socratic review method. That is where the learning is. Then you write a key takeaway for each, just 1 or 2 sentences. A summary of your mistake and your fix. For example, I chose X because Y. The real error was Z. Next time I will ABC. So for example, I chose B because it echoed the conclusion. The real error was confusing sounds like it with logically supported. Next time, I'm going to pre-phrase what the right answer must do before I look at the choices. If you do this right, you're going to walk away with 5 personalized lessons that are more valuable than 50 new questions. Now, after your 5 takeaways, you want to categorize each mistake, like you misread the question stem, or you misunderstood the stimulus or the argument, or you fell for a classic trap answer, or you knocked out the right answer too quickly, or you overthought it under time pressure, or you made a mistake with the conditional logic translating it, or you didn't do a pre-phrase. Now, if 3 of your 5 mistakes are just misreading the question, that's not random. That means the fastest score increase for you is not just doing more problems, it's to check the question. That is the whole point. Now, if you're thinking, this is a lot of work for 5 questions, you're right. But that is why it works. Most people would rather do 50 new questions because it feels cleaner. But it's actually messy because it forces you to confront your thinking. That's why this works. 1 deep review session today can prevent you from making 10 future mistakes. That is real progress. And if you do this and you realize that you've made the same mistake 3 times and hadn't even noticed, or you get what you did wrong, but you don't know what to change, that is totally normal. You can't always diagnose your own mistakes because you're inside them. And that's why I offer free private one-on-one LSAT tutoring lessons with everybody watching this now or later. If you want an extra pair of eyes on your review patterns, what you're constantly misreading, what traps you keep falling for, and what to change first, book the free lesson with me. I'll help you map out your biggest bottleneck and give you a clean plan. The link to book that free lesson with me is below this video. I'm happy to help you out. It's also in the bio on TikTok and IG. Wherever you're watching this now or later, open offer. I'm happy to meet with you personally, help you look at where you're currently scoring, what your goal is, and how to get you from here to there on this time frame. Again, it's totally free. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. I'm happy to help. I see some questions here in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can. Keep them coming. I see Buy Team is asking, does philosophy help on the LSAT, the principles of philosophy? And so taking philosophy classes could potentially help you with your LSAT prep. And in fact, the people who write LSAT questions are philosophy PhDs. Philosophy typically has you reading very difficult, dense text. The LSAT also, of course, contains plenty of difficult, dense text, so maybe there's some connection there. And the people who do best on the LSAT oftentimes majored in philosophy. So philosophy majors actually have higher average LSAT scores than pre-law majors. Can't say if it's studying philosophy that causes you to do better, or maybe the people who major in philosophy are already predisposed to do better on the LSAT to begin with. That's some LSAT logic for you right there. But there is a connection, certainly. And so if you're several years out from taking the LSAT, if you're in high school, if you're a freshman in college, taking a philosophy class might help for LSAT prep, but don't take it if it's going to tank your GPA. Because ultimately for law school admissions, your undergraduate GPA is what matters, along with your LSAT score, but law schools don't care what you majored in, so you want to take classes where you'll get a good GPA, but maybe in your free time, read some difficult dense text just to get yourself familiar with the kinds of reasoning the LSAT will test you on. Now, as far as LSAT prep textbooks, I typically don't recommend studying for the LSAT with books because the LSAT's online now. So we want you studying in the same format you're going to take the LSAT in on test day. And so the LSAT's administered online through Prometric, and you can see the actual LSAT software they're going to use on test day through LSAC's Law Hub platform. You get 4 LSAT practice tests for free on there. Then the others you get with your Law Hub Advantage subscription. And in our coaching program, we have all of our students use Law Hub directly because the cause of LSAT score drops is oftentimes due to not being properly familiar with the LSAT test day software. And so students often drop 5 to 8 points from their practice to the actual. The best way to mitigate those drops is by being familiar with the software they're going to be using on test day. So we have you drill questions by type, then we have you do individual timed sections to work on your pacing, your time management, your endurance, then we have you pull it all together with full-length timed practice tests. That's the LASER approach to LSAT prep in a nutshell. LASER is an acronym standing for Learning, Accuracy, Sections, Exams, and Review. And if you're taking the LSAT in just a month and a half, say for the April test, you'll want to focus mostly on full exams and review. If you have more time, then you could go through the entire 5-phase approach. So learning is building a strong foundation in the different sections, the different question types. Some folks will try to do that with the textbooks, but a lot of them contain fake LSAT questions that are unrealistic. A lot of them are written by AI and are full of mistakes. So I would avoid those like the plague. Use an online course where you're going to get a more boiled down, bite-sized introduction to the different sections and different question types. Then you do individual questions by type with drilling in the second phase, accuracy, to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. Then you have S for sections, doing individual timed 35-minute sections to work on your pacing and your time management. Then E for exams and endurance, doing full practice tests to simulate test day conditions. And finally, R for review, using that Socratic review method. So again, LASER is learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. It is incredibly important that you have a strong foundation before jumping into the practice tests, but you also don't want to neglect the practice tests because you want to be familiar enough with the flow of test day so that test day itself is going to feel like just another run through and you've done it all before. We want you doing at least 10, 12 exams before the big day. That could be 1 exam a week if you're taking it in April, maybe 2 a week if you can fit in the time. If you're taking it in June, you've got a bit more time. You can slow it down, maybe do some drilling before getting into the full exams. Ideally, you're doing a diagnostic test, targeting your weak areas, drilling those on the side. Because otherwise, the practice tests are just telling you what you already know, that you haven't learned the basics yet. But of course, you can learn them with time. And so in our coaching program, we built a personalized study plan for every single one of our students, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till the test. And we pair that with private one-on-one coaching, ideally every single week from now till your test. We also give you access to semi-private small group sessions 4 nights a week, but those are all optional and all recorded for any that you can't make. And you get our comprehensive on-demand course as well. And if you want to talk through the particulars, of course, you can book the free tutoring with me. Happy to meet with you personally, help you talk through your plan of attack to get you to your goal score on your time frame. Now, I see a question here asking, do I have to go to a top-ranked law school to become a prosecutor? No, you don't have to. You don't have to go to a top school to become a prosecutor. As Mermaid says, big law, you might want to go to a top school, but for government work, you may not need to go to a top-ranked school. And oftentimes, it's better to go to a lower-ranked school with more scholarship money than a higher-ranked school with less scholarship money. Christian, thanks for the kind words. Glad you're finding the advice here helpful. I see Ishan's asking, best undergrad major and experiences to get into top law schools, or does LSAT only matter? So law school admissions is a combination of your LSAT score and your GPA. Law schools don't care where you went to undergrad. They also don't care what you majored in because they are not evaluated based on those metrics. Law schools care about your LSAT score first and foremost, then your GPA. Everything else is a distant third. So your soft factors, your resume, your application essays, your letters of rec, all of those are much less important because they're not quantifiable or metrics in the same way that LSAT and GPA are. And law schools care a great deal about the numbers, the LSAT and the GPA, because that's what goes to the ABA, which in turn is pulled by US News for inclusion in the law school rankings. And so maintain a high GPA for undergrad, but the truth is that it doesn't really matter what you majored in. Your LSAT score matters a lot more. And the actual GPA, of course, matters too, but what you majored in specifically doesn't matter quite as much. I see a question here about volunteering in extracurriculars. I mean, they'll look at it. Of course, it's nice to have, but doesn't matter nearly as much as your LSAT and your GPA. So in other words, I would rather that you not volunteer and not have the extracurriculars and have a high LSAT, high GPA than have a lower LSAT, lower GPA, but a stronger resume. Of course, having it all is ideal, but don't sacrifice your LSAT to fill up your resume. Don't intern at the expense of your LSAT score. So in other words, lock down the LSAT score, get it in the bag, get your GPA up as well. Once you've secured those, then of course, intern, volunteer, do extracurriculars, but don't do them if you haven't already secured the LSAT score. I see Chuck is asking about GPAs. So GPA for my bachelor's versus my GPA for my associates. So your LSAC is going to take your transcripts and convert them into their LSAC calculated GPA, which combines all of the credits that go into making up your bachelor's in total. And so assuming that part of your associates contributed to your bachelor's, it's going to be a combination of all of the above. So you want to send your transcripts over to LSAC sooner rather than later. LSAC will convert those into their own standardized GPA, and that's going to be the GPA that law schools use. Not necessarily the same as the ones from your undergrad transcript, but your LSAC GPA specifically may be a different number, and that's the number that's going to ultimately count. So get those over to LSAC sooner rather than later so that you have an accurate read on where you stand and you know what you're up against for law school admissions, because your LSAC GPA may be higher, may be lower, but that's what law schools are going to look at. And so you'll know where you're competitive at based on your GPA. Then you'll know what kind of LSAT score you're going to need in order to be competitive at a given law school. And I get questions all the time asking, if I have this GPA, what LSAT score do I need? And the answer is, depends on where you want to go to law school. Every law school has different requirements. There are roughly 200 different ABA accredited law schools. Each one has a different LSAT median. Each one has a different GPA median. And to get into a top 14 law school, you'll need different numbers than if you want to go to a top 75 law school or a regional law school. For reference, the top 14 law schools all have LSAT score medians of 170 to 174. Their GPA medians are all roughly 3.9 or so. And so if your LSAC GPA is below a 3.9, you will need above a 170, 174 in order to counteract that or balance out the lower GPA. The lower your GPA is, the higher your LSAT score is going to need to be. Not saying everybody needs to go to a T14, of course, but the thing is that lower ranked schools might not require quite as high numbers, but to get in, but you'll also want higher numbers to get more scholarship money. So the trade-off the benefit of going to a lower ranked school is it's easier to get in and you can get more scholarship money. Higher ranked schools, harder to get in, less scholarship money, but more prestige. So there is a trade-off between scholarship money and prestige. And if you want to go into big law, maybe you want to choose prestige, you want to go to a T14. If you want to work in the government or work at a local law firm, maybe you want to go to a lower ranked school, get a full ride, pay zero in tuition. It all depends on what you want to do. But regardless, having a better GPA, having a better LSAT score will do more to set you up for success. And the thing is that for most folks watching this, your GPA is probably pretty much a done deal. If you're already near the end of undergrad or already graduated, that's already fixed. You're not going to redo all of undergrad, but you can retake the LSAT. The LSAT's offered 8 times a year. Coming up, we've got April, June, August, September, October, November. It's offered nearly every month or every other month. Plenty of chances to retake, and law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest score on your record, meaning there is no downside to retaking. If you do better, great. If you don't, no big deal. So for that reason, I recommend that everybody retake the LSAT at least once because there's no downside. If you do better, you're now applying with a higher score. If you do worse or stay the same, no big deal. The highest score is still what counts. Now, I see a question here asking, I want to go to T14 law schools, but wondering if tuition's worth it. Depends on your career goals. What do you want to do with your law degree? Do you want to work in big law? If so, maybe you want to go to the T14 because they have a more direct pipeline to top law firms. Top law firms are recruiting out of the top 14 law schools. They're not recruiting out of lower ranked schools the same way. And to them, prestige matters a great deal. If you want to work at a local law firm, you want to open your own practice, want to work for the government, it may not be worth paying sticker tuition or paying a significant tuition for those kinds of law schools. The average cost of attendance for a top 14 law school is going to be way higher than going to a state school, for example. And Harvard and Yale don't give merit aid. Other T14s do, but Harvard and Yale specifically do not. So consider whether you want to take out loans. Also know that due to the elimination of the Grad Plus loans this year, the federal government is capping borrowing at a max of $50,000 per year. But the average cost of attendance is $84,000 a year, considering living expenses and such. So there's a gap of $34,000 on average. Now you can go to the private loan route where interest rates are higher. You can dig into your savings. You can ask friends and family to help. Not everybody has that option though. So the best way to discount your tuition is by getting more scholarship money outside of Harvard and Yale, of course. And the way you get that scholarship money is by getting discounts on tuition through a higher LSAT score, higher GPA. And the lower ranked the school is, the more scholarship money you can get. And so for those just joining, if you want my help getting a higher LSAT score, getting more scholarship money for law school, whether you want to go to a T14 or a lower ranked school, get a full ride, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok, Instagram as well. Open offer for everyone watching this now or later. Now I see that Lucretia's asking, I'm finding it hard to stay motivated while studying for the LSAT. Any tips or study methods? Well, I guess my question is, what is your study method right now? Are you self-studying with books? Are you taking a course? Are you getting private coaching? It's hard to go it alone because when you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. And so getting some guidance from someone who's been there before, been through the process, gotten that top score themselves, it's going to make your path forward that much smoother. You can also join a study group. At LSAT Unplugged, for example, we have live small group sessions 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday in the evenings, but they're all optional and they're all recorded for any that you can't make. But self-studying with just videos and drill sets with no feedback, no interaction, no personal guidance, it can be kind of demotivating. So I do recommend getting some live support getting some feedback on what you're getting wrong and why, helping you find more efficient approaches. So if you want to talk through what that could look like, feel free to book the call with me. We could talk through it more. And make sure that you're engaging in a structured study process using, like what we have, for example, the Socratic review method, a dedicated framework, asking you a series of guiding questions similar to what you're doing in law school, helping you get to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why. We have small group study sessions using this process every single weeknight, Monday through Thursday. They're in the evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Inside the program, they're all via Zoom, very interactive small group sessions. These are not big webinars where you're typing in a chat box. You can be on camera. You could talk with the coaches. You could talk with the other students. And then, of course, in the one-on-one coaching over video, you can talk live with your coach, get more personalized feedback, more personal guidance. So anybody who wants to talk through that, what it could look like for you, feel free to book the free tutoring with me and we could talk through it more. I see Courtney's asking, do firms look negatively at part-time law school? Not necessarily. I mean, if anything, it's quite challenging to go to law school part-time and maintain a full-time job or a part-time job simultaneously. So if anything, they'll probably have more respect for you. And if that's the way you make it happen, that's the way you make it happen. At the end of the day, a JD is a JD. Doesn't really matter if you earned it part-time or full-time. As long as you pass the bar, you can become a successful attorney. See another question here asking from Chuck asking, I got a 138 on my blind practice. I haven't taken another one yet. Been studying for 1 month. Okay, so I mean, a cold diagnostic, whatever you score, just tells you that you haven't yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course, you can over time. The LSAT's kind of like learning a foreign language, and so take the results with a grain of salt. It just gives you a benchmark for which to measure your later future progress. You can improve significantly from wherever you're starting with the LSAT. It's not an intelligence test, it's just a test of pattern recognition. And the more you study, the more you learn the patterns, the more you learn the skills, the more you learn the tricks and traps of the test, and the more you're going to improve over time. And so look at where you're currently at, 138. What's your goal score? And then when do you want to take the LSAT? If you want to improve 30 points, might not happen in a month and a half. I don't like to promise overnight success or make outlandish claims. But if you want to take it in June, in roughly 3.5 months, you want to take it in August, roughly 6 months, there's plenty of time to improve significantly. And you can apply the second that applications open in the fall. So carve out some time in your schedule. Ask yourself, how much time can I put in per day, per week? Can you do 1 or 2 hours a day for 4 to 6 months? If so, the sky's the limit. I see Andre's asking 1 hour a day for 6 months. Very doable. If you did 1 hour a day for 6 months, I would be shocked if you didn't improve 10, 15, 20 points at minimum. Of course, it's not just a function of how much you study, it's also the way in which you study. We want to make sure that you're studying efficiently, effectively, not just drilling questions by type, not just doing exams after exam, but slowing down, reviewing your mistakes in depth, helping you get to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why. And that's why we use that Socratic review method in the coaching. If you want to talk through it, happy to meet with you personally, help you craft a plan of attack for you to get to your goal score by your test date. I see Mermaid's asking, my first score result was a 175. I need a 178 plus. I didn't really study, but how can I improve? Well, okay, so you're saying your first score was a 175? Want to make sure that wasn't a typo. And you didn't really study and you got a 175. Everybody out here is jealous of you and wants to know your secret. But you're saying you want to get a 178 plus. You want to improve 3 to 5 points. You haven't ever studied before and you got a 175 cold. Was it under strict timed conditions? I'm curious, want to know more. I guess my question is, how can you improve? Well, if you did nothing and got a 175, I mean, any familiarity that you get will probably help you improve more. I can't say what you should do specifically, though, because I haven't looked at your analytics, haven't looked at your weak areas. I mean, I honestly need more context here to better advise you. When you got a couple questions wrong, what were the weak areas? Was it reading comp? Was it logical reasoning? Was it a certain question type, certain method of reasoning? Did you run out of time? Did you maybe speed it through and finish with time to spare? I need to ask a lot more questions to get more context here. If you want to book the free tutoring with me, we could talk through it more. But my guess is it may be that you were either overthinking easy questions or you got hard questions wrong just because they're hard. Maybe there's a pacing thing to work on. I'd want to look at the specific questions you got wrong, as well as the ones you guessed on and got lucky, but it could have gone the other way. And then dig into seeing what could you do differently on those questions. Book the call, we'll talk through it more, but I would think that there's a lot more room for improvement with some personal guidance here. I see Uzuro is asking, there's this guy on TikTok that passed the bar and can't find a job. Okay, I mean, anecdotes aren't data, right? I mean, how many people are there who pass the bar and can't find jobs? Passing the bar exam is very different from getting employment. They're very different skill sets. One skill set is studying for an exam. Another skill set is applying for jobs, interviewing well, writing a good cover letter, sending a thank you note after the fact, showing up well groomed, well dressed, networking. Totally different skill sets, different levels of ambition. I'm sure there are plenty of people who pass the bar and don't become attorneys and can't find jobs. And the question is why? Is it lack of motivation? Is it lack of networking? Is it a lack of people skills? Is it lack of follow through? The job market's not great, regardless of whether you're applying to become an attorney or just getting any old job out there. AI is disrupting things as well. The question is, what are you going to do differently to stand out, exhibit some ambition, some gumption, some go-to-itness, and seek out employment, differentiate yourself in a competitive market? You mentioned you want to be a prosecutor. So are you going to blanket every single potential job opening? Are you going to network at the local bar association in your county, for example, in the state? Are you going to reach out to folks on LinkedIn, blowing up their DMs, asking them for informational interviews? Are you going to send out hundreds of those invites? You only need one yes to get the opening, but not everybody does it because there's no clear path for that. It's not like applying to law school where they're opening themselves up to applications. You got to reach out, take the initiative, apply before the job gets posted so that it never even gets posted and you get the job and you're not competing with anybody else. There are a lot of unwritten rules to getting jobs, and you've got to talk to people who have the job that you want to get and find out how they got it. Now, I'm not the best person to advise you on how to get a job as an attorney because that's not what I do. I help folks get higher LSAT scores. I would talk to practicing attorneys. I see you're asking, are prosecutors in high demand? I can't answer that question. I mean, is there an undersupply of prosecutors relative to job openings? Probably not. Is there always a need for more prosecutors? Yes. Is there always a need for more defense attorneys? Also, yes, because there are always crimes being committed that need to be prosecuted, also need to be defended against. So there are always new positions opening up, but you've got to seek them out. No one's going to knock down your door asking for you to work for them. You got to go reach out. But if you have the JD and you can network, you can definitely get the job. But the first step is, of course, get into a better law school with less debt and a better reputation, and you will be more likely to get the job. And taking on less debt will give you more flexibility for the kinds of jobs you can take on upon graduation, and getting to a better ranked school will give you the benefit of prestige. So they both have their benefits. But talk to people now who have the job you want to have and ask them what kind of path it took for them to get there. And LinkedIn is your friend here. I see Mermaid's asking, what is the preferred format for the argumentative writing portion? I followed the 5-paragraph model. Yeah, so I think five paragraphs is good. Intro paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion. For those who are not aware, the LSAT has the 2 scored logical reasoning sections, 1 scored reading comp section, and 1 unscored extra section of either logical reasoning or reading comprehension. You then separately have the unscored writing sample. LSAC transitioned to the argumentative writing sample, where you have 15 minutes to plan your essay, then 35 minutes to write the essay. Now, when you write it, you want to make a clear thesis statement, arguing in favor of what you want to do, what position you want to hold, 2 body paragraphs giving different pieces of evidence supporting your thesis, 1 body paragraph providing the counter arguments against your side, but then still acknowledging them, but arguing in favor of your side. Then you have a conclusion, wrapping it all up, again, restating your thesis. So clear structure, intro paragraph, 3 bodies, and 1 conclusion paragraph as well. That's the approach. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. Don't get super creative here. You want to clearly argue in favor of your side, acknowledge its weakness, but still come down in favor of the side that you chose. But don't overly focus on the writing sample because it is currently unscored. LSAC has indicated they will probably start scoring it at some point in the future. They even added an argumentative analytical writing score to the score report on your LSAC account, but it's still blank for now. But they don't add score report fields for no reason. They're probably going to score it at some point. But for now, focus more on the scored portions. So until you've gotten that official top score, 180, 175 plus, or whatever your goal score is, lock down. Focus on the scored portions of the LSAT for now. Do the writing sample after you do the official scored portion of the LSAT. And if you're not currently at your goal score, feel free to reach out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The links below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. Open offer for everyone watching this now or later. Now, for those just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word, share it to your socials, your subreddits, Facebook groups, Discord. I do appreciate your support. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.